Like I literally had a robot at CES during a briefing set on fire, like just fire coming out of the ass of the robot. And I was like, this is not something I've dealt with before.
Yeah. All right. Welcome to the Somewhat Creative Show. I'm Rocky Tilney.
And I'm Clark Miller. And that was Julie Crabill. We'll get to that in a bit.
But first, Clark, are we all NPCs?
Probably. Let's jump into it.
Let's
Rocky,
talk about that.
Have you seen the Coinbase Oscars ad that just recently aired?
I actually did. And I remember when it came on, and I thought something was amiss because it felt like it was kind of disturbing a little bit because it felt low res
for sure.
Yeah,
it's very weird. I really, just from a graphic standpoint, really do appreciate it and love it and everything. And I don't know if the message is what I would go with if I was them, but from a filmmaking and a just a technical standpoint, it was pretty remarkable what they were able to achieve. I think it goes along with a lot of what we've been talking about with the Apple rebranding the intro screens and the motion graphics for Apple TV and how a lot of that was in camera effects. Like we're seeing that again with this Coinbase ad where, everything is in camera. Not everything. There are some CGI elements, but for the most part, a lot of this was very practical effects, which is kind of unheard of nowadays. But again, it's that shift away from like using a lot of AI tools and kind of doing everything more practically. It's really interesting.
And I think just to set the stage for those who haven't seen this, I'll describe it a little bit, but then I definitely recommend you go look it up on YouTube. We'll provide the link to it in our show notes. But basically, it's a low-resolution video game world that was filmed practically. This is the commercial for Coinbase. And the whole idea is that this protagonist breaks free of his kind of NPC programming, and their tagline is "Your way out of the system." So like I said, no CGI. Actors are trained to walk like video game characters. It's all pixelated set design. It's all done in camera. So it's really kind of cool from like a filmmaking standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the messaging, I think.
Yeah, the messaging
that's
is
interesting.
Weird. I also wanted to point out like the prop and the like costuming was incredible. They like printed on sheets like 2D images of clothes on flat, like bodysuits basically. And even their faces were basic like face masks that came, completely covered their entire head. And then the faces and hair and everything was printed to look low resolution. It's an incredible work of production, I would say. But let's talk about the messaging of it, I guess.
Yeah. So what was your take? I mean, it's funny because it's coming from the crypto world, right? So how is Gen Z and crypto and the whole idea of this non-playable character, essentially, NPC, like that means stuff like politically, it means stuff socially. Today it's used in memes a lot. And so what are they getting at? What's Coinbase trying to say here?
I mean, it definitely seems like they're going back to the message that crypto has always kind of fallen back on, right? The goal of crypto is to be no central tower ruling everything. Everything is spread out. Your freedom, you're free to do what you want with it. There's no government oversight to it. There's no political oversight to it. It's all spread throughout the blockchain, right? So I think in a way it's definitely getting at that. I think that's a message that crypto has really lost in the investment fervor and like the practical application of crypto is that it's like it's a type of payment process that you can use without having to like go through a bank or go through like this or that or government agency or
no central
country.
Decentralized.
So I think it gets at that a little bit. I don't know if it's I think it's just a weird way to go about that, but really interesting. I don't know. What do you think of the message of it, the actual marketing of Coinbase?
I mean, kind of a mixed bag because, if you do recall, Coinbase had that last Super Bowl or the Super Bowl before last, they had the QR code ad. And then
Hmm.
that was also FTX was a big advertiser that Super Bowl too. So I'm like wondering like, okay, you're kind of attaching this whole idea, notion um, of freedom, right, with something that was like a financial collapse, essentially.
Hmm.
So, categorically, and crypto right now is not doing great. Bitcoin's down, and a lot of those other ones don't even really matter, right? And
Well, it's also been
so I
like
think for
adopted by these institutions, right? So it's not exactly living that idea of like decentralized, and when it's these
right,
big companies are now
right.
kind of in control of it, like Coinbase.
Well, and like I think with Gen Z in particular, there's this whole displacement and anxiety, and that was kind of the NPC idea. And we're
Hmm.
saying crypto is the solution to that anxiety. I don't know. I feel like that might be kind of a stretch.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've always
But
sold. What were we gonna say?
go ahead.
I think we've always been sold a fallacy of like the stock market or the investments, and these things are going to be your way out, and your
Right,
way out of
right.
whatever, the middle class, or your pathway to financial freedom and success is through
Well, yeah,
these, you know, types of institutions, and it's never proven to be that true. So I
right,
don't know. I
right.
I also think
Well,
like it's an interesting from a marketing positioning, like how many people actually realize that that was a Coinbase commercial and know what even Coinbase is, and like do people are
mhm,
just remembering the commercial itself and the oddity of it, the weird nature of it, this uncanny valley, or
right,
are they remembering Coinbase? I don't know.
right, right. Well, I think I definitely I'll remember the commercial itself, the production of it, because I thought it was very unique, the way it was
Yeah,
shot,
yeah,
and
but I
and
definitely had to look up
the
like,
design
wait,
of
what
it.
was it for again?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I have a feeling we're going to talk about this a little bit more with our guest today, too, because this is kind of right in line with um, some of the stuff that we've been talking about. I won't get into it yet too much. But hey, there's something else that you had brought up to before, which you kind of brought to my attention, which I think is really cool, and it's this whole idea of solving a really old problem, um, and with design essentially. And I, set that next
I mean,
piece
I
up because I
love
think it's super
this
interesting.
story. It's a little old now. I think it kind of came out last year at Cannes Film Festival, but
Hmm.
really has come onto my radar in a big way. And I think it's like such an amazing story of how design can really better our experience of the world, right? And help people, and how it can be rethought. So the idea is that closed captioning has been around since, what is it, 1971? That's when it was invented, and it has not changed. It's the same little white text in a black box, and different iterations of that. But there's very little visual input from it. It's just reading what's on the screen, And
Right,
there is this
right.
new caption with intention that has been released. This idea, and it's basically rethinking closed captioning to be
Hmm.
much more informational. So they've and it's using design principles. It's using motion graphics. It's using color. It's using different boldness and thinness of text, even sizing of text, and in a really beautiful and clever way. I think it's really remarkable, and I think that the bigger overarching story is like, wow, to take something that's just not been thought of as anything for years and years and years and decades, and to rethink it and put it through that like creative lens of a design system approach. Like it's a
Yeah.
remarkable success story for, I think, our industry, right?
Yeah, I love the story too, and just to kind of give people a little bit of the technical background on this too.
Hmm.
So there's three kind of components to their new captioning system. It's attribution, so who's speaking, as you alluded to. Synchronization, so the words are actually appear when they're spoken on screen, which is If you ever watch anything with closed captioning, it's always way off or way delayed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And intonation, like how it's delivered emotionally. And so they're using color-coded character attributions, like you said, word level animation, stuff like that. So it's really just a really unique experience because it does affect 466 million people worldwide that are hard of hearing, deaf or hard of hearing. And it's just a problem that most people probably would have never even thought about. Like, unless you actually had someone in your family or you experienced it yourself, it's not something you would have really considered. But that's a huge swath of people that you're now inviting into the story in a much more interactive and immersive way as film and storytelling is meant to be told. So I love that. I think it's a great example of design solving a problem that
for sure
got forgotten essentially.
And I think
very
it's
much
a great to tie this back into the Coinbase ad, which was, a little bit human-centric, but it's I don't know, how would you put that ad and that idea of like communicating the message that they're communicating versus this, which is really like designed to help a population of people and to be much more of a, I don't know, a intentional kind of use of design, whereas the Coinbase ad maybe is just a little bit more of for shock value, really creative way. Our guest today has spent 2 decades at the intersection of AI, storytelling, and the question in tech that nobody wants to ask: should we actually be doing this?
She founded Inner Circle Labs, where she helped shape how some of the earliest AI companies told their stories to real people, advising nearly 200 companies with exits to Apple, Microsoft, Airbnb, and more.
And she went on to serve as CMO of Descartes Labs and GoNoodle, and most recently co-founded Fathom.org, where she has led convenings bringing together policymakers, technologists, and civil society to wrestle with the real-world implications of AI.
And she's now stepping into something new and being very mysterious about it. Please welcome Julie Crabill to the Somewhat Creative Show.
Hi,
Thank
Julie.
you for having me, guys. I go way back with Rocky. Very nice to meet you, Clark, and nice to see you, Rocky. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah,
thanks for joining. I've been trying to get you on for a long time now, and we finally did it. We finally got you.
Stealth mode. Stealth mode. I love
so Julie,
mode.
This is our... Sorry, Clark, I didn't mean to step on you.
No. I love saying stealth mode.
Stealth mode's fun. So we have a new thing we're starting with season 2 here, and that's we're going right out the gate with our rapid fire questions for you. So we have 7 rapid fire questions, short answers. Keep you on your toes. She was not given these ahead of time. AI in 2026. Are we ahead of where you thought we'd be or behind?
Ahead.
Okay.
Do you want me to say longer words than that? I'm very good at keeping it precise.
Whatever you'd like to respond with, you can. There are no rules.
I was just going to keep going, but if you want to expand, you are welcome to.
Yeah, go. Do it.
All right. I think we're ahead too. Best piece of tech that actually works for your parents and your parents' generation.
Sadly, I think it's probably Alexa, and I'm remiss to say her name too loud right now.
Yeah.
And I think she's the worst, and I think it's really awful that that's the best there is for them in terms of what my parents are using.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, here's another one. Responsible AI. Is it real discipline or is it expensive PR?
I think it's real discipline. For some people, it's expensive PR, but it shouldn't be if you're actually doing it right? It's sort of the new greenwashing of like, how can we show that we're responsible without doing too much? I think even trying a little bit is better than not trying at all, but we have to be really mindful about all the communities that we serve and really thoughtful about having all of the voices of those communities in the conversation when we're building this tech, or else we're not just going to screw up how the tech works, we're going to absolutely affect the bottom line.
I love it.
Great answer.
Worst piece of AI hype you personally have helped spread? This is a bit of a gotcha question.
Ooh, that is mean.
That was a mean one.
Wait, that I have helped spread?
Have you helped spread in the past, 10,
your PR life,
years?
maybe? Yeah.
Yes. I have an answer for this. So I would say that a lot of the and maybe I shouldn't name names right now, but if you looked up my background on different things, you'd figure out who I was
Mhm.
talking about pretty easily. But a lot of the sort of home robotics companies had a lot of
Mm.
hype. They had a lot of big names attached to them. And then ultimately the products were just toys. And they should have been labeled as such instead of trying to make it into some bigger, like it's going to understand you and work really well. Like I literally had a robot at CES during a briefing, set on fire, like just fire coming out of the ass of the robot. And I was like, this is not something I've dealt with before. So
That's amazing. I remember
Awesome.
going to Epcot Center in, I don't know, I want to say I was like 13, and they had the like robot, they had the House of the Future, and it had like
Yeah. Yeah.
the little, it really wasn't, it was like the House of next week, because they had like a robot lawnmower that, you could probably go out and buy like a week later after I saw it. And and that was probably 30 years ago. So I think we have not come very far in the robot. The promise of the robots helping you around the house has been with us for quite some time now. Never lived up to the hype.
It's ramping up though.
yeah,
We'll see.
hopefully it gets fixed. But yeah, like try harder, Epcot, try harder.
Yeah, really. Those AI
All right,
robots, Rocky,
Julie.
they are not real. Those are people.
Coming
You know,
soon. They're coming
just saying.
soon. They're
Just
coming
saying.
soon. Julie, you have a teenager. Is your teenager more optimistic about AI than you, or more scared?
He's a newly minted teenager, and I think he's more scared. I think it's naturally a time like for anxiety for all of us as we look
Mm-hmm.
at the world around us. I think, sadly, AI will be caught up in the swirl of that overall anxiety that people are feeling and sort of how it brings up just kind of macro level questions. So I think if you
Mm.
probably took AI as like a thin slice, he's more optimistic. But when you layer it on top of everything else and the stories that are currently being told, like I think AI needs to find a way to tell better real world stories because right now we're really in a trough of people being like, it's going to take my job. And they're not really seeing a place, an end game that is good for them, right? They're not seeing somebody having a plan for like,
Mm-hmm.
how are we going to afford to live if none of us are working? How are we going to, enjoy this utopian future where everything is done for us? So I think there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, and it's a big responsibility for their generation to figure it out. But Gen X out, you know what I mean? I'm
Right.
kidding. I'm here to try. I'm
Love
here
it.
to try.
Okay, one word to describe what it felt like being in the room when AI went mainstream. One word. That's a tough. Maybe a couple words.
I mean,
Could do more words. Yeah.
yeah, there's so many moments. I don't think it was any singular moment, but I do think there were times like early on in the days of PowerSet, which ultimately sold to Microsoft and kind of got sucked into Bing. That sort of natural language moment where an understanding of sort of having not really pure AI, but having this idea that we needed technology to move from um, something that we had to really think about how we were going to manipulate into something that we could just use our own words to talk to. And I see that happening even now with like Claude when I'm using it, right? It's much more able to understand what I want it to understand based on natural language. So that technology was an underpinning of that. And I think it's just awe-inspiring when it actually works. It's going through a lot of the demos with a lot of these early stage companies during the Inner Circle Labs years, we saw it
Mm-hmm.
not work a lot. So when it did
Mhm.
work, it was very like, oh, this is the thing we've been looking for.
Did you
Yeah.
hear that, Alexa? You should be able to work.
I got rid of
Sorry.
my Alexas. I'm
Did
all
you really?
Google now.
You're all Google
Now it's
Yeah,
Home?
it's like
Google.
Dang.
a lot of times we're asking for a simple web search. She can't even do a simple web search. I'm like,
I
forget
know.
it. At least
Yeah.
Siri
Ridiculous.
can do that. God.
They did integrate the AI stuff into Google, which is a little bit nicer because it gives you like, because now you could actually ask, hey, I need a recipe for this, like if you're in the kitchen, and it will actually give you the recipe on screen. Otherwise, it says, oh, this was before AI was integrated. It would give you like, oh, I found this recipe on this website. Would you like me to send you a link? I'm like, I'm cooking. I don't have time to click on a link. It's like so
Yeah.
dumb. But anyway, okay, last one in the rapid fire round here, Julie. So we're not going to say much. We don't know much yet, but you're starting on a new venture. Give us
Awesome.
a one word hint at what that new venture is.
Family.
Okay.
I got one of
We'll
those.
leave it
I
there.
like those things.
We all
Those
like
are great.
those, right?
Find ways to support people we love.
I love it.
Well, thank you for
Amazing.
playing along with that. That was fun.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about doing the rapid fire like that is that it's like, I know we could talk extensively about each and every one of those questions. But we have a lot more to talk about too. And, we talked a little bit about, let me go back to your PR days. Let's go back there. You had a PR agency. And so storytelling is like the currency of PR, right? You have to tell stories. So why does storytelling, why is it so difficult in tech, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's always been hard, and I think it remains hard. So I think even today, as people are starting to use AI to say, "Tell me what story I should tell," and "Tell me what the press release should look like," what they're missing is they're creating cookie cutter stories that match everyone else's stories. And I think
Hmm.
often PR people and marketers, communicators are talking to executives to get stories, which is an important source, right? But I think you have to, especially in technology companies, spend time with the engineers, with the builders, with the people who are actually doing that work. And they often don't really want to be bothered with PR. So you have to be really crisp in getting what you need from them. I consider it like mining for gold, right? You have to be able to go and like find the gold that's in those hills and bring it back and figure out ways to create sort of the connective tissue that is the full story, because oftentimes the engineers don't actually think that what they're doing is sometimes the stuff they think is the most interesting is actually sort of not, and the stuff that they think is the least interesting is actually where there's like a little moment of
Mm,
magic. So I think it's really about doing that deep work, and then figuring out a way to layer sort of that reality on top of the vision from the executives versus just sort of taking it from the executive and going with it, right? They probably would have been better off had they done that when they were doing Theranos's PR, right? Dig a little deeper. Maybe you'll find something
Yeah.
good and maybe you'll want to run away.
The Theranos, the marketing for Theranos, it did work. A lot of people heard about it. It just wasn't for the right reasons.
It did it Yeah, it
It was a
did
great
work,
story. It made a great
and I'm
story
really glad that I was
afterwards.
not in that room. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Right.
Who's doing it well right now? Who's telling the AI story, the tech story? What company has the best kind of story in your opinion?
I mean, I think hands down it's Anthropic right now. I think that they're, what they're
mhm,
doing in terms of I'm not always sure about the ads that they've bought. I'm not sure that they actually really jive with their broader story. But I think the story that they're like, if you listen to Jack Clark on Ezra Klein, like that's a
mhm,
really compelling way to talk about it and think about it. And I think that their sort of focus on responsibility and being thoughtful. The story of them sort of leaving OpenAI, the story of them going up against the Pentagon. I think all of those are really compelling because they're authentic and true to their process and where they've come from. And the product's
Mhm.
great. That helps.
I was just going to say the product is great. I do wonder how much of the story is about the company and not about the product with Anthropic. It's a like is it being overshadowed, I guess, by some of the political and kind of, you know, I don't know what to call it, the just like the minutia of the news cycle. Is that helping or hurting their overall
I
like product adoption? I don't know.
I think that's probably true. I think for where we are right now in sort of AI adoption, it's helping, but they're
Yeah.
going to have to evolve that to get into like telling stories about how it's helping real people live better lives in order
Hmm.
to really get in more homes, right? Like right now they're focused on a great and paying audience, right? They went to number 1 in the App Store after the Pentagon thing, right? So they're
mhm,
coming after the people who already sort of have adopted AI or really want to adopt AI or are using it already and think maybe they should get a paid account somewhere. And that's different than sort of the longer tail of the audience that they're going to have to go after next. So I agree with you, Clark. I would say it's good for now.
Yeah, yeah, good, great for just in general, like the PR of the company and the overall like differentiating them from OpenAI. I think is
mhm.
doing them a world of good. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. But the real question is, what was Rocky like in high school? That's what we all want to know. Was he as bald as he is now?
Worse,
Sorry,
even balder.
sorry.
I just thought you were a very nice, genuine guy. You hung out with sort of, a certain set of people, and I hung out with a different set of people. But I never found you to be somebody who like made anyone feel bad about themselves, which I think is sort of the quintessential high school experience, certainly for females, right? Is that you have a lot of memories of the people who made people feel like shit, and you were not one of those people. So, good
I
job.
don't know
See,
what's
Clark?
changed then. I don't know what's
See?
changed. You
I
make
was
me feel like
nice.
shit every day.
I was
Was
nice
I
then. I'm nice now.
was I one of those people, Rocky? Did I make people feel
Not.
bad?
I never thought so. I thought you
Okay,
always seemed
that's
very pleasant and friendly and nice.
nice to hear.
Yeah.
When I showed
See?
up for class, pleasant and friendly.
I had to go back in time a little bit.
Back in time. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the storytelling aspect. And Julie, you mentioned it a minute ago. You mentioned Ezra Klein and the Jack Clark um, episode, which I listened to a couple weeks ago when it aired. Um, and I loved it. I thought it was very interesting. I thought, and it was a long episode, and I listened to the whole thing straight, I think, because I was so fascinated by it. But I also think back to the last election and all the controversy about um, is she going to go on Rogan? You know, she meaning Harris, right? Or the other podcasts, right? That were all part of that conversation about the campaigning and stuff. And is not just podcasts, but other forms of media, other interview style shows or things on social or Instagram or TikTok. Is that more in the mix now in terms of like corporate or enterprise storytelling? And how do you see that kind of playing out? Because I know it was huge in the campaign.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that more than ever, people are like, what is the sort of slice of the audience we need to get to, and where is that audience? And more often, it's podcasts, it's conversations like this one, it's being out in the right rooms where things are happening. So, thinking kind of in a very specific way about just like how do we get a press hit is sort of in the past, right? It's lovely to get press hits, but the press ecosystem has really aggressively contracted, and the sort of new media ecosystem has grown, exponentially. So I think people have to look at where the audience they have is and where the audience they want is, and then go after those from a corporate perspective. And that requires really good storytelling. Like, again, back to Jack, like
Hmm.
he was a Bloomberg reporter before OpenAI and Anthropic, so he has a history
Wow,
of storytelling that I think has served him well in being a good voice for the company. I think
that's
that's
great.
right. We'll have to put a fact check underneath if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was at Bloomberg at some point.
I don't know where you
It
are
checks
that you
out.
think
He
we've
was
got fact checkers. This is
I'll fact check myself later.
there you go.
I'll put a link in the show notes to prove my information.
um we talked a little bit about this in the rapid fire about what does responsible AI look like, what's it look like in practice versus what it looks like in like a pitch deck or a slide deck. And you did a lot of work on this at Fathom. You brought those people in the room, the important people in the room, to actually talk about policy and things like this. How does one organization, in terms of how they adopt and use AI or build AI for that matter, how how do they make it responsible?
Yeah, and to be clear, I wasn't the only person who brought people into the room. I think, there was a great team of people doing that. And what was really great about it actually is every person we would bring into the room would help us bring additional right people into the room to make it a really good
Hmm.
conversation. And I think a lot of that in terms of how people thought about it was like, what are the red lines, and sort of what is the best end result we could go for? So what are the things we're completely societally uncomfortable with seeing happen when it comes to AI, right? How do we think across populations with that? Young people, elders, people in academia, people who have, in the university setting. So going across the board of like, where do these people live and work? Women and girls, for instance, and what is going to affect them that we need to really, really hard line avoid? And how can we have conversations like Jack was at the first Ashby workshops? He spoke. Like, how can we have
Mm.
conversations with the people, not just in policy, because sometimes policy lags the need for this kind of stuff, right? We all see that happening. So how can we talk to the people who are building it so that they can actually implement some of those things? And then on the pro side of like, what does the sort of perfect outcome look like? A lot of the conversations also centered around like, who's being underserved right now that it could actually really benefit from AI, right? Like, how can
Mhm.
we turn AI into a force multiplier for supporting the people that we love, our neighbors, our community, and sort of making sure that we're thinking about that beautiful, messy human stuff all along the way as we're building AI.
That's really fascinating. I think it's definitely a story that's not being told as well. It is all about productivity and, how is AI going to make it so you don't have to do chores around the house, or how is it going to make it so, you don't have to write your own emails and things like that. And I think we are missing those stories in the world from what AI is actually doing to help people in much more like human ways in dire situations, and not necessarily like dire. That's maybe the wrong word, but just in ways that improves their life and not just makes them more productive. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and frankly, I think the frontier labs like Anthropic, OpenAI, they really need those stories to be told, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just sort of like,
Hmm.
oh, it's makes your emails better, or it helps you like write a good breakup note, or whatever it is that kids are doing these days. You can write your essays, and college is sort of just
Yeah.
about meeting people then. But really, like, how is it making people's lives better? How will it actually help real people? Those labs, I think, have a big responsibility in finding and telling those stories. So you have to connect the dots, right? Like we would hear people working in retail saying, I really want to use AI to do something. And then like somebody from, the retail federation coming in and saying, oh, I think I can help you with that. Those kinds of stories, if you can pick them out of, if you can take that needle out of the haystack and actually figure out a way to amplify how that work is changing the way we shop and making, even that's surface level, but I still think those kinds of stories will make clear why we need AI and why it's ready for all of us to use.
Hmm.
One of the things I was reading recently, and I have to fact check it to see if it's actually true, but I was reading that OpenAI wants to be more focused on enterprise and less on consumer usage. And the data supports the other way around, that a lot of people were using AI personally for therapy or for health, things like that, but more casual users. So I would imagine OpenAI is not seeing those as like real, uh, a real traction for growth. Those users, potentially there's a different tier for them, but their real growth is going to be enterprise and these other larger contracts like, defense department sort of stuff, right? So that being said, how does AI benefit everybody if the companies making the AI, the tools, are not really focusing on everybody else?
Yeah, so two thoughts on that. First of all, I think it's funny that you mentioned it because I agree. I think OpenAI, I think we'll see whose bet paid off, right? OpenAI thought if we can create a consumer wedge, then we can build enterprise on top, and that's where the real success will be. And Anthropic went the other way. They were like,
Hmm.
let's build a tool that works hard and well for developers, governments, et cetera,
Hmm.
and then we'll add the consumer layer on top. My money would be on Anthropic because I think if you build a tool that can build more tools, which is what they did, then that can be happening while you're sleeping, right? It's a
Yeah.
easier way to win. Um, and then uh, in terms of how how is it going to be good for consumers? I think the answer is additional companies in the space. So I think it's really these sort of AI builders who are building on top of these labs and their frontier models to make sure that what we're actually seeing come out works for real people. I think because of how much money they've raised, the frontier labs really have to focus on the big swings, and they'll still do stuff for consumers, but that means that there is a window now, and this is why I think I'm really hopeful, sort of as someone who loves to work with startups and is in the process of co-founding a startup in AI. I'm really hopeful because I think the next 2 to 5 years is a critical time
Mm.
for builders to get in and make stuff on top of those frontier models that people really need, and then tell those stories really well.
Earlier in the show, before we had you on, Clark and I were talking about things that haven't changed in a long time and are finally getting some attention, right? One example of that, and this was sort of like a design related issue that has just been abandoned for 50 years, and that's closed captioning for the hearing impaired. So Clark actually brought this up to my attention earlier in the week and said there's this organization called Caption with Intention, and they've developed a new captioning system essentially that is more immersive and that brings, um, more more of the storytelling aspect into the captioning. So in other words, there's a lot of emphasis on like larger words when there's emphasis by the actor. There's color coding based on the character who's speaking, and it's synchronized. So it's synchronized actually with the characters on screen um, dialogue. And that closed captioning came out in 1971, and it took 50 years for them to make it, basically design a better system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to change it for the better. And we're wondering, like, AI will accelerate these sort of things, but what else are there other problems out there that we're not addressing that have just been kind of sitting idly on the shelf collecting dust because we have a solution that's good enough? No, there's no need to put energy into it.
Yeah, and nobody's pointing the AI, target at it. What are those?
Yeah, I
hidden?
mean, I think so. First, you mentioned design. Obviously, the show's heavily design influenced by the two of you. I really think this is more of sort of an overlay area, but I think design is going to be really critical. I think right now you could ask
Mhm.
Claude to throw up a web page for you or to build, whatever. This is what we want the product to do. But if it isn't something that people love, if it isn't something that they're drawn to wanting to use, if it isn't something that's really easy to use, then no one's going to use it anyway, right? And I think that's where like the human element of design comes in, right? Because a lot of times, Claude will design the thing that looks like all the other things, and if you don't actually understand your user and how they're going to use it and design around that, then you're dead in the water anyway. Um, yeah, I mean, and I think one thing that to answer your question of like closed captioning is a great point. It's awful. It's still so awful where I'm like, just load in the character names and realize that what you're saying is Ned and not Red. Like she's talking to the guy named Ned, right? It's like a main character in the show. Like there's a lot of things like that where I think it could be much better. So I'm glad you talked about that. The other thing I think that has not been improved enough is sort of like family life, like how we take care of each other in the real world. Like I'm seeing some people work on more of that stuff of like, how do I capture everything that I need to know as, a busy parent who's working and has all these different lists that I have to keep track of. I'm seeing more work done there now slowly.
Mm.
But I think that sort of, again, that goes back to the human element of like, how do we use this to better take care of each other? And it's not to
Hmm.
replace the humanity and all of that. It's to take enough of the work off that when we are spending time giving to each other and caring for each other, we're not so frazzled by the workload that we can't actually be present with one another. So to me, that's what it is. It's not about saying, I just want to outsource this to a technology. It's what
Mhm.
parts of it can I outsource to a technology so that the time I spend can be better spent.
That's a great story. Like if somebody can tell that story well, that you're getting back time with your family, you're using these products as a way to do that. That's a winner in the marketplace, I think.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. I mean, how many times have we all like yelled at our kids because we're at our wits' end with everything that else that's going on? And if all of those other things were gone, we would have a little bit more like wherewithal to not let our frustration boil over in a way that we end up regretting and being,
Mhm.
sad about later. We've all done it, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of thing I think would be really useful.
I mean, one of the things that I've found particularly useful with AI, just in my own business, essentially, is just looking for blind spots, looking for gaps and patterns that are hard for humans to identify unless you spent a ton of time looking at the data, understanding how to parse data and research it, right? So I'm thinking, if AI and LLMs are really good at identifying patterns and disruptions in patterns, that I think would be something that'd be helpful for personal use, right? Like there are times in our lives where we get busy with things and we're not really self-aware of, oh, there's a blind spot that I'm not paying attention to, right? Or there's something I'm forgetting or missing. And to me, I see it as an augmentation, not necessarily a replacement for the human. It's like a little tap on the shoulder. Hey, by the way, you know, this is coming up, or a birthday, or you haven't spoken to X in a while, right? Those little assists, I think, are really interesting, I think, use cases. And I'd love to see more products and services being developed around that.
Fully agree. Like, I would love for somebody to just be like, "You already ordered that. Why are you ordering it again?" So it doesn't show up and you're like, "Oh, shit, I did already order that." Or like, "Hey, you're driving from your house to pick up your kid at the soccer field and you've got 10 extra minutes. Here's something you could do with those 10 minutes that would knock something off your list that you haven't thought of. You could pick up the dry cleaning or whatever." Like, I would love for somebody to
Mm,
build that. It's not what I'm
You
that's a
building,
good
but I
mean
hope
idea.
wait,
somebody's building it.
you mean scroll Instagram for 10 minutes is not an option in the car?
Yeah. It sadly is the only option, right? Like,
I
I would
know,
not that
right?
sometimes that's actually what you need in an AI to tell you, like, "Stop trying to get everything done, Julie. Take a minute to breathe," also might be useful for me at times. But there are moments where I'm like, "Dude, I drove right by where the dry cleaner was, and had I just left 5 minutes earlier, I wouldn't have to do," especially as gas prices are going up right now. How can we, like, optimize, our
Yeah.
gas usage even?
Yeah, I love that. Why can't we FedEx our life? Because that's what, all the delivery
Right.
companies try to do
I'm
is
sure
make their routes more
there's ga
efficient and
Only right turns.
right,
only right
only right
turns.
turns.
Needs
What's a hill you'll die on about AI that most people in tech would push back on?
Hmm. That's a really hard one. I think I don't know if most people in tech would push back on it, but I think a lot of people would, and I think sort of like, the makeup of your board, whether it's an official board or an advisory board, is really, really critical in terms of making sure it's not all just the same white dudes, right? Like, you've gotta have I know it's a word that people aren't allowed to use anymore, but you've gotta have, like, a diversity of opinions and views and thoughts if you're trying to build these companies that are gonna serve all of humanity. You've gotta have that in there, and I think there's not enough focus on that right now.
I love that. I mean, I think we get lost in this idea that you're just doing that kind of thing for the sake of doing it as a way of showing the world that you're inclusive. I think what often gets lost is that having those other voices and reaching for that inclusivity, it actually makes your operation work better. Like you're getting more viewpoints, you're getting more, you're not getting the same answers from everybody. Everybody has a different perspective, and that's going to help kind of craft your messaging and your pathway forward, right? That's often left out of that conversation.
Yeah, you're totally, you're uncovering blind spots that will either, if left in place, cost you a lot of money, potentially lead to lawsuits. Like, there's a lot of different things that are it's not just a nice to have, it's absolutely fundamental to the growth of a business to have, I think, if you're trying to build something for everyone.
Rocky, give us another hot take.
I got another hot take here. So we talked a little bit about Gen Z, and we all have young kids, and one of my worries right now with young adults and one that's about to graduate high school and go into college now is the job market and this kind of notion of being, not having your own agency because of AI doing everything for everybody. We've talked about this in previous shows too. We talked about if you have enough experience as a professional, you're going to use AI to kind of take the tasks away from the next generation, right? Which would normally have been mentored during those times. So you're doing that to be more efficient. Like, oh, I don't have to hire an intern. I could just have AI do these tasks now. And so there's no grunt work left for the new hires or the recent grads, right? And so is it a legitimate fear?
Yeah, I think both are legitimate fears, and I think, it's really the not having enough work is gonna affect the young people who are coming up into industry and trying to get jobs first before it affects everyone else, right? Like, the people of our age, we have something that we can bring to the table, so we will be replaced, but we will be replaced less quickly because there is a need for sort of human oversight. But you're right, if we're not mentoring people, if there's no apprenticeship models left because those people are sort of, unnecessary to because the AI is doing it, we really will screw our future selves. Like, what are those people going to be doing, right? They're going to eventually be rioting in the streets if you don't give them something to do that they can do that is productive, that makes them at least a living wage so that they can survive and they can grow their families and they can, become adults and age, all of these things, right, are really, really going to be constrained. It's super concerning. Like my 13-year-old wants to make movies. He's always said he wants to go to NYU or USC. I'm like, is that really even going to be a thing by the time he goes to college, for college to be the thing that's happening? So I think what I encourage him and what I encourage all young people to do, with the caveat that I have no idea what their lived experience is. I talk to as many of them as possible, but living through a pandemic, people said it was like our 9/11, but our 9/11 was like a day and a couple weeks where people came together, and theirs was a year of people ripping each other apart, and like massive sort of
Hmm.
disparate views coming into play in a way that
Yeah.
was really negative and kind of hurtful. So I don't really know what their experience has been, but I feel like my advice would always be go out and build something now. Like use AI as much as you can. Look at it as your job to just start building the thing that you want to build, and figuring out a way to put it out in the world so that you can create a voice for yourself, and you can show that you're doing things, and that you can learn from the technology that's available, and you can be on top of all of that stuff, and then turn off the computer and get outside and go and live your real life. Like don't let
Mm,
it
I
completely
love that.
consume you, but look
Yeah.
at it as sort of your 8-hour workday, if you don't have a job yet, is messing around with AI and building real stuff that is in line with what you'd like to do.
Hmm.
I love that.
Great take. Yeah, that's really nice. I think it's an important thing to remember that, you know, AI is a tool and it will replace the things that are done poorly in our creative world, and I think this is true of like filmmaking, for example. I think it's a tool that is going to disrupt that industry significantly. I don't think that there'll ever be a time when a human can't think of an original idea and use AI tools to create something, but that the start to finish pipeline of like AI directing, written, writing, the whole nine yards is just going to create what we've already seen, which is AI slop that is unoriginal and just a feedback loop of other things that it's seen, and you still need that human kind of creative connection building to take these ideas and tell the story in a different way, and I really do think that there's still opportunities in those industries. It's going to be harder, but if you're going to be great at it, then you can still rise above it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to a certain degree, you've got to start to embrace it, right? I mean, imagine a future where your options are either doing something with your hands, because robots aren't good enough to do that, right? So are you like a plumber or a massage therapist or whatever, something that requires in-person human to human interactivity, or
Hmm.
you're babysitting AI, or you're like fact checking and like final touches on AI. So if you have to be in one of those three roles, I almost think it's better at this point to start to imagine yourself in all three of those spaces, and what would you really want to be doing if you were in those spaces, and then
Hmm.
learn a little bit about how to do that. Before I got into any of this tech business stuff,
Hmm.
I was a massage therapist. Still have my massage table, and I'm like, hey, I guess I could do that if eventually having hands becomes the premium thing, right?
Hmm. You haven't seen the robotic massage therapist that they're rolling out. Um, no, I think that's true. I
That would be
think
I would be
frightening. That would be so frightening.
I know it's
They just
scary.
punch
Look it
a
up.
hole
It's
through
a
my
real thing. I'm
back
not
or
joking
something.
around. That's a real thing.
I
That's
mean,
a real
I'm
thing.
a little I'm a little bit into it because I like a really deep tissue massage, but I also think like there's something like, even if you go sit in a massage chair that's a really good massage chair, you enjoy it, but it's different than sort of the
Yeah.
feedback of another human feeling where your muscles need work. Maybe the robots will get better, but I think our lifetimes we probably have some safety in those things, and then the youth need to figure out what's next and how they're going to integrate this into the society that they want to see, the world that they want to see.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned working with your hands, and massage therapy obviously is very hand driven. I do think, and this is something we talked about earlier in the show, and we've talked about last show, is the rise of more hand built in camera effects. Like we're really seeing a big trend right now pushing into that world of like you have the Apple motion graphics that we've talked about on the show, and we earlier this show talked about the Coinbase commercial with real practical effects and very limited usage of CG and no AI.
Hmm.
I do think that there's this marketplace arising that's in response to all the AI. And I wonder, and I'd love to hear your take on this. Does it stick around? Is it a trend because of the push towards use of these tools and the backlash against them? Once the backlash goes away, are we going to still see these kind of opportunities?
I think there will be room for both things, but I think there will be a premium on things that are created by a real person, right? Like once things created by AI become commoditized, it's, there's only room for, if you can build again that voice for yourself as an artist and as someone who has a perspective, that's the kind of thing that I think humans will need to do. Like, I mean, I'm even looking back at sort of the idea for Stranger Things, right? It's nostalgia combined with something completely new, combined with sort of old kind of horror and teen tropes, and putting those things together. Could
Hmm.
AI have done that as well? I think that there's just too
Mm,
much humanity in that story, in the way that story was told, and that's why it was as popular as it was. I think there will be AI that will do really great work combining things like that, but I think we will still have room, especially from this sort of creative generation that's coming up, for them to have a voice. And I think there will be a premium put on something that is created by a real person, even if it's done in sort of a small way, right? Like, I can picture a world where we go back to, again, we're
mhm,
talking about opposable thumbs being a big deal again, right? That was like way back. We're throwing it way back to opposable thumbs.
Hmm.
I think there's room for young people to figure out, is it more of a bartering system? Is it more of a creation of sort
mhm,
of new art? There is scariness in that, but there is also a huge opportunity for them to create from the ground up what they want to see in politics, in society, in work, in love, in life. Like, what is good for them and what is not. Like, I find this whole, like, dolls and, AI marrying your AI. I think that's completely creepy. And I hope that's not where we land. I hope where we land is not like the
mm,
movie Wall-E, where all the kids are like, it's cool, I'll just sit down and everything will be handled and I'll have a big gulp. Like,
Yeah,
that would be really bad in my opinion. But again, it's not my future. So if that's the future they want, it's not the one I would pick. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to pick your future at this point.
definitely, definitely. I hope that it's that those opportunities are always available to us, and that industry, there's always, you can buy a cowboy hat online from Temu for $2, but there's still a marketplace for a handcrafted, you know, hand stretched leather cowboy hat that costs $5,000. It's like we're always going to have both things. I hope.
yeah, and just going back to the technology aspect of it too, and I think I know the answer to this question, but I like to ask everybody else. I want to see what Julie thinks of this as well. I mean, to me, this feels like the biggest inflection point in technology in my lifetime.
Hmm.
It supersedes cars, going from internal combustion to EVs. Uh, I'm trying to. There's a personal computer, the phone. Like, I'm trying to go through all the like tech
I know.
highlights in
What
my
has
life.
affected more industries than this? Yeah.
Honestly, and I've been saying this to people too. When I first did my first Dolly image in AI, I was like, oh, this is kind of garbage, but it's kind of cool. Like, this is kind of cool. And then, like, 6 months after that, I was getting worried, like, oh, this is going to eat all the creative jobs. But now I've kind of come around and going like, oh, I'm totally leaning into this. This is going to be a game changer for me. So I've kind of oscillated on my view of it. But going back to the original question, this is the biggest thing, right?
Yeah, I would agree for sure. I mean, I think, first of all, we went to high school together and you mentioned the advent of the car. Just want to clarify for the audience that we were not alive when the original cars were invented and
We were
became a
not.
thing. Just when
This is the
EVs
EV,
came
the
out.
EV. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just to be, in
Those
case you're just listening to this and you can't see us, we are not that
Yeah.
the
old.
horseless
What was it like?
carriage, Julie. This
What
is the
was it like when
horseless
that first
carriage.
train came through your town, you guys?
Yeah,
But I mean,
we're still
I,
waiting
I,
for
I
it.
I would agree with you that it is absolutely the biggest technological innovation in our lifetime and certainly in our kids' lifetimes. Like, I don't think something bigger will happen, because I think it is like a foundation layer. Like, the internet was a foundation layer, but even the internet was sort of us taking all knowledge and putting it in one place that you could access online, which was huge. Don't get me wrong, but this is even bigger because it's an ability to sort of outsource the work around that knowledge. And I think it probably, to your point of like, now I have to embrace it and I like to embrace it, it's gotten a lot better. So it's a lot more embraceable. But also, I think it's like going back to when the original car, like if you were the person, like it's still a novelty to go and see Amish people riding around on horses and carriages, right? Because we're like, that's a wild thing to do given that
Hmm.
cars exist. So I think if you wanted to, if you as somebody who works in design wanted to just completely avoid all AI, I think it's just not possible anymore to do, and stay relevant, right? You've got to figure out a way to create a sandwich between, like, you are the bread and the AI can be some of that meat and maybe some of the sauce or whatever, but you have to be involved.
Right.
All right, now I'm
Well, that's
hungry.
great. That's a great take. Although there's one piece of technology that still hasn't been invented yet, and we were promised in 1985 that we'd have this, and this is the Mattel hoverboard. Why don't we have
Oh,
that?
I know,
Come
or the
on, this is Back to the
jetpack
Future.
or any of
yeah.
that
And the
stuff, right?
jetpack.
Like,
Well, the jetpack you could probably have now.
yeah, I mean,
I think
over
there's
water, you
jetpacks.
can use those things, or like
Yeah,
military
the hydro
applications,
ones.
probably.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably have all of it. It's just, I think that a lot of it is liability. Like, we live in a very lawsuit centric society. So if you build something like that, like
Yeah.
there's, we have to put things on
Yeah.
pizza that say take the plastic off, right? There's always going to be
That's
somebody
true.
who's going to like fall out of the
That's
jetpack
true.
or off the hoverboard. Like, I think we just have to, that's probably why it hasn't gone much further. And hardware is really hard. Like, software is much easier, right, to
Yeah,
build.
that's true.
Hmm.
We did
Yeah.
have the flying Joby Aviation air taxi over the Bay Area last week, I think, was their test flight. So we're getting close to the flying car, which is fantastic because they've been advertising the flying car in Popular Mechanics for like 100 years. Finally,
Yeah.
it's like happening.
Yeah.
But are you
Talk
ready
about.
to get into that? Are you feeling confident about putting
I
your
mean, people
body
are
where
afraid
you're
about the Waymo. So can you imagine? This is like Waymo in the air.
right?
I will say
Although we'll have a
the.
pilot initially before it's autonomous.
Yeah, I almost feel more comfortable with a AI pilot than I would with a real pilot. I keep saying this about AI, like
Yeah.
AI taking over driving cars, like the Waymos, say what you want about them, but their accident rate is phenomenally lower than human
Yeah,
drivers.
yeah,
So
yeah.
in some regards, like just statistically speaking, whether or not you're comfortable with it, putting your life in the
That's
hands of
besides the point. Yeah.
something that doesn't have eyebrows, it's that's another question, but statistically speaking, it's going to be where you're much less likely to be injured or die in a flying AI driven flying car.
Yeah, I mean, and if we're gonna get into them, we need to have AI to make sure that they're not knocking into each other, right? There's like no medians and whatever in
Yeah,
the sky, so we
geofencing,
have to
yeah.
make sure, right? Yeah, or make sure that it doesn't make it so that like we can't see the sky anymore, right? Like there's futuristic movies that cover that, right? Fifth Element or whatever.
Yeah.
There's
The
like you
Fifth
can't even
Element.
see the sky
Yeah,
anymore. Yeah.
yeah.
So we have to make
It'll
sure that
happen.
doesn't happen. Yeah, you think?
It'll happen. Yeah, it'll happen.
All right, Julie, before we let you go, we started this episode talking about NPCs and Gen Z anxiety. We've covered a lot of that now. Who do you think AI is really failing right now? Is there anyone building, like, I don't know, does anyone building it even care about people? I mean, we were talking about Anthropic a little bit, that seemed to still have that caring mentality about humans, but is there anybody that's like actually focused on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's. I think there are people focused on it and focused on thinking about it, but I don't know about good businesses that are addressing it. But I think the two primary audiences that AI is underserving are kids like Rocky's kids who are just coming out of college and looking for jobs, right? Like we are not helping these kids figure out how to build a career and a life and something that they can want to do every day and be proud of right now. All they are is facing this sort of dread of like, how will I ever get a job and what is that going to look like for me? And finding that the reality is as hard as they thought is even worse, right? It's not just sort of like existential anxiety, it's actually really, really difficult for them. And then I think, retirees, like people like my parents, are being failed by AI. Like the rate of elder scams and abuse that have
Mm.
gone, I mean, it's gone from, I think I saw the other day, it went from 600 million in 2020 to 2.8 billion in 2024. So
Wow.
300% increase. So the bad guys are using AI to scam elders, and we're not doing anything to use AI to protect against that. So I think those are the two big audiences that I'd like to see more done with.
I mean, talk about not just falling behind, but like actively destroying lives and getting worse is it's definitely that community, the elder community. And I just got a text today from the DMV saying I owed a parking ticket or something that was clearly a scam, but like if I was 20 years older, I don't think I would have realized that it was a scam and
Yeah.
known
It's
how to look it up.
impossible
And
because you only take Waymos
it's
now.
gotten
So
well,
yeah,
that's true. I don't actually drive myself. No.
Yeah, but they are getting
yeah,
more sophisticated, right? They could do something that's sort of like your Waymo account. Now we've set it online, so we've ruined it. You're definitely going to get this kind of a phishing scam. But like your Waymo account has been suspended. They're getting more sophisticated because they know
Mm-hmm.
more about us and what we
it's
do.
getting harder. Yeah,
Yeah, it's getting harder. And we share our lives so like voraciously online publicly, or so many people do, that it's getting easier and easier to figure out ways in.
yeah. We're at the
Everybody
age now
talk
where
to
we,
your family members and get a code
yeah,
word. So if you get a call from them with their voice saying they need help, if they don't know the code word, then and never share the code word on the internet. Wait, but the truth of that is like there is maybe going to be some beauty in the fact that people need to be together more, right? Like in a post-pandemic world where our kids got used to not going out and now they have a bit of anxiety about being out and they're like, why would I leave? Everything I need is here.
yeah,
There is a drive toward a world where if you're not face to face with the person and you're not able to actually see, hear, and experience them live, you can't trust it. So maybe there'll be some upside of that.
Yeah. I play a game every day that's called what my wife has shared with me that she thinks is real, and I have to tell her, "No, I'm so sorry. That's not a real puppy and kitten cuddling."
Yeah,
Or that's
it
not
could
really
happen.
Mariah Carey kicking that dog.
Well, that'll do it for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Somewhat Creative Show. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, subscribe wherever you listen, and leave us a review. It really does help.
Huge thank you to Julie Crabill for joining us, and as always,
Stay curious, stay creative.
we'll see you next time, everybody.
Thanks, guys.